And we are back on this very important Thursday, May 3rd, 2012 edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Now, we just covered the unprecedented released, leaked, and confirmed Army document about re-education camps, brainwashing, all of it, right out of North Korea. We just covered that. But I saw a report yesterday out of Minnesota, and I went and did some research, and so did my team, and it turns out it's in the news there. And they're reporting with a straight face that the police come and pick up the Occupy Wall Street people and take them and give them marijuana, cocaine, heroin, whatever they want. And I was talking to our guest before he went to this interview, and I said, why do you think they're doing it? And I told him my reason for it, but we're going to ask him, as an investigative journalist, what he thinks is going on, and I'll give you my take on this. But this is not a joke. This is not satire. This really is happening. And here's the headline at Infowars.com, police drugging Occupy protesters. There's no other way to put it. And we've seen cases in New York and Austin, Texas, where I live, where they would release people out of the mental hospital and tell them, you'll be arrested anywhere but Occupy. Or we're releasing you out of the county or city or state jail. You've got to go there or we'll arrest you. In Austin, they arrest the homeless for sleeping, unless it was Occupy. Then they put news cameras down there and say, look, there's homeless people defecating. So it's all part of a psyop. But I'm not joking. We're going to play some video clips here that this investigative journalist shot. Dan Fite is a web developer, and he's also worked as a professional reporter for the Capitol. But now he does it as a volunteer to cover real social issues, and he joins us. The website is hongpong.com. We'll have that on screen for you. But this is big breaking news. In fact, he's shattering the media control, and now it's coming out outside of Minnesota. The police chief there in the area says he didn't know the state police were coming in and doing this. And in Minnesota, state police, like Texas, means feds. So amazing information, but he's also got some groundbreaking research on the Rex 84 garden plot, cable splicer, political roundup news that integrates in with the incredible information we covered previously. So that's the in-depth summary. Let's go to the investigative journalist, Dan Fite, to break this down and go to some of these clips. Dan, I was pinching myself watching this video, but sure enough, I could tell it was real. I mean, Academy Award actors couldn't, pose as cops and stoned, Occupy people. But then I went and looked. It's in the Minnesota News, but they're reporting on it like, oh, the police are taking people to warehouses and putting them on drugs. That's no big deal.
Right, and basically what we found was pretty clear evidence, and we interviewed a number of participants who went through the program, in some cases multiple times. The program is called Drug Recognition Experts, and it's been run by the Minnesota State Patrol. And we did clearly document that not only did people say that they were offered free drugs for participating in the program, as well as incentives such as cigarettes, cash, food, etc., all of which is extremely unethical, which is why this program has no institutional review board type of oversight, because it's very unethical to encourage people to take drugs in any setting, especially with police officers and, according to participants, with drugs that they were given. And then, so essentially it turbocharged a situation of chemical intoxication at a site called PV Plaza, which is a 24-hour open public plaza space in downtown Minneapolis. And this program has been going on for multiple years. They did use PV Plaza as a site previously, but what was particularly striking now was how closely it all aligned with Occupy, as well as the statements from multiple people that they were asked questions about. Who do you see the leaders are in Occupy? Can you tell us what you guys are doing? Can you tell us your plans to protest on May Day, et cetera, after intoxicating these people in a controlled setting, according to those participants? So that's pretty serious. And the DRE program, which was basically built up by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which is actually a pretty dangerous organization. A friend of mine described it as globalist gun grabbers, classically, And so the IACP has rolled this DRE program out across the country. It seems
No, they are. They openly say they want to use foreign troops in America, and they do not believe in the civilian ownership of firearms. This is a extremely anti-freedom organization.
Yeah, well, IACP is one of the principal organizations that advanced the whole platform of fusion centers, and now they're trying to expand a new total information awareness type of system, which is called NIEM, or National Information Exchange Model. So one thing perhaps that people that are both part of, the liberty movement type people as well as Occupy people could work on is trying to get their municipalities to pull out of the IACP and, basically isolate the negative influence that this organization has, which is not widely known. But I think that would be one way that we could address the problem of these kind of policies being rolled out.
Well, I agree. I want to get you on the wider radio show because I've been reading your articles. You're extremely informed. I've been nose to the grindstone for 17 years, and I even learned some stuff and went and checked and found out you were telling the truth and it was accurate. And unfortunately, it's hard for me to learn something new about all the things they're doing because I'm so immersed in it. But you can teach an old dog new tricks. Look, let's cut right to the chase before we play some clips, and I want you to elaborate on the wider image here. Minnesota, as you know, during the RNC, almost 4 years ago, they used an Austin Fed front guy. Well, I mean, tell folks about that, because so much we see is happening in Minnesota and in and around Minneapolis, St. Paul as an epicenter. And then now, I want to get into the motive after that of why are they doing this? Demonize Occupy, make them look like a bunch of drug heads, create databases on people, interrogate folks while they're under the truth serum of drugs. I mean, there's so many things going on here.
Yes, absolutely. I think the best way to describe the overall Midwest pattern is there's something called the Midwest Green Scare, which a really good reporter, Will Potters, covered in detail. Essentially, there are tons of people working for different federal agencies that are supposedly looking for terrorists, but since they really don't have any terrorists, they can collect what are called, in the FBI, statistical accomplishments for hassling people, putting them on watch lists and that kind of thing. I was recently provided with more than 600 pages of documents from 2 FBI investigations, and you can Google that if you look up COINTELPRO Gothic 2. The first story was called COINTELPRO Gothic, and that addresses the operational pattern the FBI has across the Midwest to shadow activists before the Occupy movement started. And more broadly, yes, I think it's pretty clear they're interested in doing a lot of database collection and that kind of thing, and it extends beyond the government as well. There has been a great deal of overt surveillance by shady parties around the Twin Cities in the last couple months, and I think it's probably fairly likely that those are people like private security hired by the banks to photograph people and that kind of thing. So it's a high tempo thing, and I would say looking up Green is the New Red Scare and checking that out, you can find a lot of information about a number of different levels of this type of program going on that started well before Occupy.
Well, that's what I discovered more than a decade ago. They go around and just get people to talk about violence or try to imply that peaceful groups are bad to get funding, to justify their existence. And even one of the head federal marshals, air marshals, went public a few years ago, the Denver Post, and said, we're ordered to put innocent people on list for what they order, or if a child takes a photograph.
Yes.
I mean, I mean, it's almost like exaggerating foreign military threats to get spending. It's creating a domestic threat.
It is absolutely a domestic version of crying wolf and problem reaction solution type operations. In the last several years, I've run into at least 4 people that turned out to be FBI operatives. And I set up one of the, essentially the original IRC chat channel for Occupy Wall Street when it started, because I've been involved in the live video team since the very first day everything got rolling. And within a couple of weeks, the FBI sent their controlled hacker, Sabu, onto my channel to kind of, lurk as an identity. So the FBI is really all over things, and their operational pattern clearly involves planting informants, such as Brandon Darby was the one who was set up in Texas to create a threat during the RNC, and this case in Cleveland, which was on the exact same operational pattern. So there's really no regulation of what the FBI does in these situations, but whenever they create anything like this, they can accumulate statistical accomplishments, and we can only find out about that through freedom of information requests. And
that's right. They're not infiltrating truly dangerous or bad groups. They're getting the underwear bomber on the plane in Amsterdam so Chertoff can make money on body scanners. They're going out and finding mentally ill prisoners, welfare people, mentally retarded people on record to then pay them, sometimes for years, to get them to just talk about an attack. and then viciously sending them to prison
Yeah.
when they really need to be in a hospital. Are you excited about the fact that suddenly it's all over mainstream news that the FBI creates its own terror threats and then stops them?
I mean, this is a subject that I've tried to look at very carefully for many years that happens across the political spectrum. So I'm glad that that's being publicized too. But I would add, in the case of this whole DRE program, the war on drugs has really offended me for a long time. I've tried to get officials at the state, local, county level to talk about the consequences of drug prohibition, creating financial corruption in the banking system. Wells Fargo is a very powerful player in this city, and they're well known to launder billions of dollars of drug money. And I can't get any officials on the record to explain, if we have a Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis and it conducts wire transfer payments, like, who is responsible for dealing with the financial corruption in those wire transfer payments? The people at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is part of the Department of Public Safety, which is involved in this whole scandal, they do not deal with the Federal Reserve. They have no access to those
Yeah, let's
systems.
be clear.
So
they pull teenagers over and take them to jail for one joint.
Right.
Meanwhile, Bloomberg reported Wells Fargo and its subsidiary Wachovia in 2 years laundered $376 billion. And then you've got the state police trying to get kids and people on drugs and offering them heroin, cocaine. You can have a heart attack on that stuff. But that's okay. And you're like, hey, these guys deal drugs. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. It's so obvious. They make drugs illegal to keep the price up. But let's stop there. Let me ask you the big question before we go to video clips. Why do you think they have a nationwide program that almost no one knows of? I mean, I know statistics show the DARE program actually gets children interested in drugs, so that they're advertising it to them. I mean, and most of the cops are, too ignorant to even understand that, but we understand it, and our viewers understand it. Some of the public doesn't understand it, but expanding on this complex issue, point blank range, covering this, breaking it, why do you think, not the reason the cops think, but why are the social engineers, the International Association of Chiefs of Police and all these groups, why are they trying to get people on heroin and cocaine and marijuana?
I mean, simply put, chemical dependency is one of the most effective means to control people. And so the DRE program clearly seems to be intended to introduce officers to the idea of controlling people through chemical dependency, saying, I will give you a little bit of what you need in order to get information from you, and acclimating that to them, to that type of process.
There you go, turning the cops into drug pushers. This is how you introduce them.
Yeah, but also too, I think part of the reason the videos resonated is because it's a condensation of everything that's disturbing and horrible about the war on drugs from the police. They didn't want to be videotaped because they know they feel guilty about it, and they know that it's irresponsible. And
well, that's like the troops saying we got to grow opium because we're against drugs, and we load it on the planes, but we put you in jail when you use it. It's all just out in the open now.
Yes, it is. And so what I'm personally happy that, like, this appears to have been, an egregious enough violation to catch on tape and put the case together. And other people in other states, I really want to encourage other people to start investigating programs in their own areas. But I'm encouraged because I was really hoping that the Occupy movement could really get at the war on drugs, because before the war on terror, the war on drugs was used as one of the main, levers to advance the surveillance state, to implement the tracking systems of the military-industrial complex into local communities, using federal grant programs with freshly printed debt dollars to send out military hardware into different cities. So the war on drugs has always been used to kind of advance this agenda. And we saw in South America, for example, the regional alliances that they've used to keep the war on drugs rolling are finally disintegrating. So can people like the Occupy movement, Liberty movement, Truthers, We Are Change, can people expose the different corruption going on? Can we force the different layers of government to account for all the financial corruption and finally quit abusing people? It's the sense of abuse. It's the sense of treating people like
objects. Well, it's the oldest trick in the book. Listen, it's re-legalizing slavery. You can't just grab somebody because they're black and throw them on a ship because, you misinterpret the Bible and say they're the devil and deserve it. Now you just put out a substance you know is addictive, you bring it in, you keep it illegal to jack up the price, and when they use it, you throw them in your prison for 25 cents an hour, putting everybody else out of business and driving down the wages. We were just showing while you were talking video of you there talking to the police. I want to go to this first clip where they take a young man away. He comes back obviously very inebriated. But from your research, and I looked this up, they admittedly give them cocaine, heroin, LSD, we have no idea the provenance of these drugs or where they got them. Is this some crap they got in the locker?
Well,
you know,
right.
Marijuana, all of this. I thought this is so deadly that we've all got to have the government, you know, basically taking our freedoms away. But what are they doing? Again, preying on Occupy Wall Street like a shuttle bus, drugging everybody up.
Yeah.